Yeah, thank you so much, Ron, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining the session. Thank you for your time. In this first session today, we're going to talk about AI. So my name is Sri Ganapathy. I'm with Microsoft, like Ron mentioned. I'm part of a team at Microsoft called the Global Black Belt team. And our team focuses on some of Microsoft's strategic focus areas, AI being one of them. So I work with many customers such as yourselves in helping them adopt our AI platform. So in this session, we're going to talk about how do we take advantage of some of the innovation that Microsoft has brought in the AI world and how easy it is for you to get started in using those technologies in your applications. So before we jump into AI, I know we have a number of other sessions and Ron talked about data. So data is obviously the key foundation, right? Without data, there is no AI. So even though I'm going to start talking about AI, you have to have a good data foundation. You have to make sure that you have data that is useful so that AI can be, or AI applications can be built on top of it. The old adage of garbage in, garbage out absolutely applies when it comes to AI. So good quality data is something that is a prerequisite before you want to start building, AI models and such. And there are lots of other capabilities that Microsoft, Amazon, Google, many other vendors offer in terms of building that data foundation. But in this session, I'm going to talk about once you have the data in place, how do you then take advantage of it? Because I've heard one of my customers say, data is actually one of the most expensive assets they have. While everybody talks about data, everybody talks about how it is important to have a data foundation, that data is useless if you cannot, turn them into insights. And that's exactly what AI helps you do, is how do you take this data and turn them into useful insights. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And like Ron mentioned, I don't like to do a lot of PowerPoints. Instead, I'd like to sort of show you some of these things in action. So hopefully you all can see my one slide that I'm going to talk about this afternoon. And then we will jump right into demos. So this one slide establishes context on what are the various offerings that Microsoft has when it comes to building AI applications or solutions. And on the left-hand side of the slide, you see that we have different personas, different roles. So depending on what your skill set is, you may be able to use some of these tools that are very focused on that audience. So there are some tools that are focused on developers. There are some tools that are focused on data analysts and data scientists. And there are other tools where even if you're a business user, you can take advantage of some of the offerings that we have without you having to know programming languages for that low code, no code user base that is also very important. So that's how, these different services are structured. I will briefly break this down and then I'll jump into showing some of these services in action. So if you go bottom up on the slide, all the way at the bottom of the slide is our machine learning platform. Azure Machine Learning is one of the cloud services that Microsoft has to help you build that AI application from end to end. All the way from taking your data, preparing the data, doing some feature engineering, training on a large data set if you want, on some managed compute in the cloud. And once you have that data trained and models built, how do you then take those models, try different combinations and permutations of models to see which one makes the most sense for your scenario, deploy those models on a compute platform and offer it to your end users. So the entire life cycle, the machine learning life cycle, from data preparation to data training to model building to model deployment, is done using this Azure machine learning platform. And as you all probably know, when you're building machine learning applications, it's not a one-time task. It's not like you take the data, you build the models, you deploy them, and you're good to go. That is not how it works. You have to constantly go and have an iterative cycle where you can retrain that model on a new data set maybe. You may have to bring new models into the equation as business scenarios change, and you have to constantly manage and monitor them. The term that's used in the industry for that is MLOps. You have to have a DevOps practice for machine learning. CI/CD and those software engineering best practices equally are important in the machine learning world. MLOps also means that you need to have tools to be able to do that effectively, to be able to monitor those models that you've deployed, etc. Azure Machine Learning also offers a ton of capability around that. So the very bottom of the slide is a core foundational service called Machine Learning Platform or Azure Machine Learning. This is really meant for data scientists. If you're a data scientist that are building these machine learning models from scratch using open source technologies and other frameworks. This is also meant for ML engineers that are deploying the models, that are managing the infrastructure around the machine learning services. So these are the audiences that we typically cater to. Now, there are a lot of folks in my customers that come and tell me, hey, I cannot just afford to have a team of data scientists. I may have a couple of data scientists, or I may have very, very few that are focused on those highly challenging problems, but I do not want every single thing to be built as a custom model. And we recognize that. And so what Microsoft has done is we have a number of AI models that we have built, and we offer them to you as customers so that you can reuse those models. So instead of you having to be a data scientist or hire a team of data scientists for every single use case, you can take advantage of a plethora of AI models that Microsoft has built for you. We call them cognitive services. So that's the layer on top of Azure Machine Learning. So if you don't want to use the machine learning platform to build models from scratch, we have used this platform and built models, and we are offering them so that you can use it in your applications very quickly. So cognitive services are a set of pre-built AI models that Microsoft has that you can quickly use in your applications. And the cool thing about cognitive services is, even though these are pre-built models, you can actually customize them, because not every time you can take a model that somebody has built and use it as is. You have to retrain it with your data set. You have to make it more customizable for your use case. And so a lot of these cognitive services are also customizable. And we have different cognitive services for different problem areas. So you may be solving a problem around image classification or object detection. Well, we have a set of models that are called vision-based AI services. Then we have a set of models for doing speech type work. So you may want to transcribe audio data. You may have to understand call center analytics. So we have a set of models that are focused on speech data. We have a set of models that are focused on language. NLP, NLU scenarios are very common in the AI world. You may have to do sentiment analysis. You may have to do text summarization. These are all very common problems that you're trying to solve. And so we have a set of models that are focused under the topic language. And then we have decision. And we also have a partnership with OpenAI, which is a company that has built the largest language model in the world. And Microsoft has an exclusive partnership with them where you can also use that service in Azure to build those sorts of language models. So this area here called cognitive services is really meant for if you're a developer and you understand how to call a web API. That's all you need to do. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to understand how to build AI models, because we have built them for you. And this is a very interesting area. This is actually one of the fastest growing services, and a very this cognitive service under the Azure umbrella is the one that sees a lot of usage every day from Microsoft's customers. And so this is where I'm going to spend a lot of time today, because it's very, very easy. All you need to do is really be able to go in and take the API and infuse that into your existing application. We will not go through the rest of all of these different sections in the slide, but real quick, on top of cognitive services, we have also built what we call applied AI services. These are specific services that are meant to solve a task. For example, you may be wanting to take forms. Forms could be invoices, it could be W-2s, depending on the industry you're in, it could be insurance forms. A very common task that we see customers do is document processing. You may want to take these documents or forms and take the information from them, the key value pairs, and then do something with it. You may want to automate it as part of an automation system, as an example. So we built a service called Form Recognizer that sits in this layer on top of cognitive services. So it's one more level of abstraction where if you don't even want to call these underlying AI models, whether it's language models or vision models, to build a document processing solution, we've built a service for you. So you can think about any of these services in these two blocks as pre-built offerings that you can quickly take advantage of. And I'll show you how to do that here in a demo shortly. But before we get to that, the last section is the one on top that is focused on business users. Because these AI models that we have are APIs. So we have some really nice UI that you can use to quickly play with them. But at the end of the day, you have to understand a little bit of how do you call a web API. So it's meant for a developer audience primarily. But we have customers telling us, I'm not even a developer. I don't even know a programming language, but I'm a business user. I understand my business domain. I'm a healthcare expert. I'm a finance expert, and I want to use AI in my applications. Well, we have a set of tools called the Power Platform that are meant for drag and drop and building applications using the drag and drop low code, no code format. And that Power Platform is meant for business users. And what we have done with our AI portfolio is all these different AI models that we see here can also be called from these Power Platform tools, which means if you're not a programmer, and if you want to just drag and drop and build applications, you can still do that using the Power Platform that Microsoft offers. So that's sort of like the overview of the different services that we have, whether you're a data scientist, whether you're a developer, whether you're a database analyst, whether you are a DBA, whether you are a data engineer or a business user. We have many different tools, and each of them may be appropriate for a certain audience depending on your skill set and your background. So please, if you have questions, please let us know, and we have a lot of documentation that can help you get started. But what I'm going to do in this next section, in the remaining 15 minutes or so, is to quickly show you, well, if you're getting started and you want to take advantage of these pre-built AI models that Microsoft has, how do you do it? So what we have done is we have made it very simple by creating a studio. We call it a studio, which is nothing but a web-based interface for trying out all of these different models and seeing if it makes sense in your use case. So let's quickly jump into my browser screen here, and I'm going to show you these various studios. And you don't really even need to know the URLs by heart. I can certainly, send them to you. But if you search for Language Studio Azure, you'll get this web URL, this web portal that's meant for doing language-based work. If you search for Vision Studio on Azure, you will get this Vision Studio and so on and so forth. So that's the beauty about all of these different web-based interfaces. It's very, very easy to find them and get started. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what are the scenarios we are trying to solve. You may have seen that the topic of this particular session is how do you use AI to build conversational applications? How do you use AI to build maybe robotics? How do you use AI to build IoT? There are so many different applications for AI. Let's take one example so that we don't try to boil the ocean. And these patterns will apply to whatever use case you're trying to solve. One of the common things that we see around conversational AI is in call centers. So you may have a call center where you're trying to take the call center data and do some analytics on it, right? I'm trying to understand whether I have positive customer feedback coming from these calls. Can I use this information to do some call center coaching of my agents? So to do all of these different things, there are various steps involved. One of the fundamental things that you have to do is, well, if you have a call center and people are calling this call center, they have speech data, and you want to be able to take that speech data and transcribe them. You want to convert speech to text. So that's an AI model that you need behind the scenes. It's a deep neural net model that you need to be able to take speech data and convert them into text. This is such a popular and a common scenario that you don't want to have a team of data scientists building a speech model. We have a really, really well-defined, one of the most accurate in the industry speech to text model that you can take advantage of as an example. So if you go to our Speak Studio, you can see all the different speech models that we have. We have a model for speech to text. We have a model for custom speech. We have a model for text to speech, and so on and so forth. Similarly, once you take the speech and transcribe them into text, well, now you need to do some recognition of maybe some key terms. Well, now you need to use a language model. You may have to call your NLP, NLU data scientist to help there. But we have a lot of language models that you can take advantage of. So for example, you may have to extract some key phrases from that text. You may want to understand sentiment on that text, or very, very common scenario, they want to summarize. So maybe I've had a 20-minute call with the call center. I want to do a quick summary of my call. So I want text summarization. Well, we have models to do that. So all of these models can be, again, like I said, accessed here. So let's go ahead and take a look at how do I do speech to text, right? So let's say I'm interested in calling my speech to text model from Microsoft. Then all you have to do is go to my speech studio and you can click on one of these links. Each of these links help you try out an AI model behind the scenes. So in the case of real-time speech to text, as the name indicates, I can send speech data and get text back and see how well my model does. And the cool thing is there is an API behind this that you can implement in your applications, but using this UI-based studio, you can quickly try this out and see how accurate is your model. So I'm going to actually do a live demo here. I'm going to speak live into my microphone and I'm going to see how well does my model do here. So I'm going to start. This is a demo that I'm doing for my Angel Beat audience to showcase the capabilities of Microsoft's speech to text service. This service can be utilized for a call center scenario as an example, or many other use cases that my customers have tried in the past. I'm going to stop it. You see the live transcription that's happening behind the scenes. I'm actually calling my Azure AI speech to text cognitive service and getting you the results back in real time. And it's done a very good job. I mean, I spoke a little slowly, but it's still done a very good job of transcribing my data. What you get behind the scenes is actually a JSON. When you call this API, you get a JSON with the text, of course, and it's got a lot of other metadata, like my confidence score. You know, it's got some other key elements like lexical information and so on and so forth that are very useful as you're building a speech to text application. And again, in the same studio, I have information on how do I connect to my API. And I can even view a sample code on GitHub if you want to take this speech to text and implement it in your real world scenario. Now, oftentimes my customers ask me, that's great, Sri, you spoke English language words. Few things, can I do it across multiple languages? Absolutely. We support 140 languages and dialects. Also, what if my speech data has a lot of domain-specific terminology? So what if I'm in the healthcare industry and I'm trying to transcribe the text or the conversation spoken between a patient and a doctor? There is going to be a lot of medical terminology used there. How good is my model where it can pick up those terms? Well, you can try it out, like I said, very easily here. You can even upload your own custom audio file and try it out and see how it does. If it's not picking up a lot of the domain-specific terminology, that's when you can customize this model. Remember, I talked about model customization, where you can go in and you can create your own custom models. So I actually have a custom speech demo also here, where I have actually used a training data set that has domain-specific terminology. So you can quickly upload your own data set here. So I can click on upload data. And if you already have a transcript of a conversation that has a lot of domain-specific keywords, you can send it to my speech service and you can train the model. And then once you train it, you can then test it with custom speech data. This is how you can customize the default speech service that we have, which is generic based on, it does really well on many languages, but if you have domain-specific terminology, you can always customize it. So that's one example of using a cognitive service or a pre-built AI model from Microsoft that is focused on speech. And we have lots of such models. And again, if you go to the speech studio, you can click on any of these boxes to quickly try out how these models work for you.
Hey, Sri.
Yeah.
Jim Jen had a question. How much programming and setup does it take to start using these programs? I would imagine it's pretty much works almost right out of the box for many initial applications.
That is absolutely right. So the only prerequisite before even trying this UI, this web portal that I'm showing you, is creating an Azure service, an Azure resource That is all you need. And even for creating that Azure resource, we have a free tier. So you don't even actually have to pay anything to try this out. You can use our free tier, which obviously has certain limitations in the amount of data that you can try, but it's good enough for testing the accuracy. So the answer to the question is, yeah, you need to create an Azure resource, and then you can come right into the speech portal that I'm showing you here and start uploading your data and trying out any of these speech models in the UI. So there is no programming involved. Now, if you want to take, like, let's say you really like the model and you want to try this, you want to actually productionalize it, you want to operationalize it, implement it as part of your production workflow, then again, it's one line of code. You're sending the speech data, so it's taking an input as speech data, calling the API, and it's returning you back the JSON, which is the transcribed output. The rest of what you do is up to you as an application developer, right? You're just integrating it in your application. But if you don't even want to do that programming language of writing something to call an API, that's where our Power Platform tools come into play, which I'm not showing you here in this demo. We have a Power Platform that you can drag and drop and build those workflows as well. So very little depending on your skill set, but the AI model itself is all done for you. It's behind the scenes, it's black box. You don't even have to worry about anything to do with the AI part of it.
Great, thank you, Sri. And that answered the question from Jim.
Perfect. So I'm going to show you, so in the spirit of like going through the different cognitive services, I showed you speech and it makes it sound like, well, that's the primary area. No, we have vision-based models. We have language-based models. I'm going to show you vision, which is always exciting for a lot of customers. So if you go to Vision Studio again on Azure, you can try out all our different vision models that we have. So one of the popular scenarios is OCR. You want to extract text from images. So you can click on that. You can upload your own file here and see how well it does. You can use one of the samples. So if I click on this sample here, it's able to pick up all these different elements from this image and give me the output in text. So this UI makes it very simple for me to try with my own data set, how good is my model performing. And if I like the accuracy, then I can, of course, go in and start utilizing them. Or if it's not doing a great job, that's when you can customize it. So just like the custom speech model, I can create a custom vision model. So you can actually, there is a separate UI for that. It's called Custom Vision Studio, where you can then upload your own images, train them and say, hey, for these sets of X-ray images, as an example, if you're in the healthcare domain, this is what I mean by the lung, or this is what I mean by these X-rays seem to have a disease. So you mark it, you tag it, and then once you train it with your own data set, you can deploy the model on Azure. So on top of the pre-built vision model that we have, you're now applying your customization and you're getting a model that's customized for your use case. So it's super easy to try. So similar to the vision scenario and the language scenario that I showed, the other one that is also super interesting for a lot of my customers is forms recognition or document processing using forms. So I'm trying to see if I can, okay, there it is. So form recognition is, think of it as, well, I do some OCR, which is great, right? I can extract some text. But not only do I want to do the OCR, I actually want to pick up key value pairs from these forms. So for example, I may have insurance forms and I want to take the name, the date of birth, the insurance provider, so on and so forth. How do I do that? So we built a service that sits on top of our language and our vision model. So we're combining two different AI models and bringing you a service called Form Recognizer to do this. It's a very popular service. And if you go to this Form Recognizer Studio, again, you can quickly try it out. So for example, I can go into my, into one of these. I can go to my read, Form Recognizer service, and I can then go upload custom data. Like for example, I can say, hey, I have some samples here, and I can go and analyze this, which means I'm calling the service live on the Azure cloud and bringing back information. So this is being transcribed for me, but it's also picked up some key elements from this form. Or I can go upload my own data set, and I can then go and just use that particular data set. So I'm actually going to see if I can quickly find the data set that I had for this, which has, because one of the common questions that we get from customers is, can I do handwritten information? So I have some prescriptions, and this is a prescription from that I just downloaded off of Google that has handwritten information here And if you can understand doctors' handwriting, they say your AI model is doing a really good job. So this is actually not a badly written prescription, but still, I mean, it's good to test how good your form recognizer service is doing. So if you notice here, it's picked up all of these different key elements of the particular document here. So date and, like age and things like that. And so you can try it out pretty easily with the Form Recognizer Studio, or you can try one of our custom models that are built for certain types of documents like invoices, receipts, business cards. We even built one for health insurance cards, vaccination cards. With the COVID pandemic, we have a lot of healthcare customers that wanted to scan the vaccination cards and just take the information from it, so on and so forth. And then just like other models that I just mentioned, there is also customization available. You may say, hey, my data set, my documents are very different. It doesn't satisfy any of the pre-built information that I see here. Then you can create your own custom model where you can click on this and you can train your model with the custom documents that you have, and you can actually tag it. So for example, in this prescriptions demo that I built for one of my customers, I can go in and say, hey, here is an example of a prescription that I get. And here's what I mean by description. Here is where the address information is, so on and so forth. As long as you give it enough data to train so that you can, at least cover some of the variations, it does a great job of then, trying it out. You go ahead and try it out on new forms that it has never seen before, and it does a great job of understanding that information. So another example of an AI model that we have that is also customizable. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I know we are like right at the end of time. If you think about this AI portfolio again from Microsoft, right? We covered a very, very small slice, which is these pre-built models that we call cognitive services. We have different studios for each of them: Vision Studio, Speech Studio, Language Studio, and so on and so forth, that you can go quickly try out without you having to write a single line of code, without you having to be a data scientist. Now, if you like it, then you can go productionalize it with other applications that you already have in place. We did not cover the Azure machine learning platform, which is really meant for the data scientist audience to do custom modeling. So you may say, hey, all these models are great, but my scenario is so unique that I need to build a custom model. Great. You can use the Azure machine learning platform for that. And we are completely open source friendly, where you can use all of your existing open source frameworks as part of this platform. And then last but not the least, if you're a power user or a business user that want to do this in a low code, no code fashion, we also have a power platform set of capabilities. So that is pretty much all I have. I don't know if there are any other questions. Ron, happy to stay and take any questions, or if you have questions later on, feel free to let us know, and I'm more than happy to help with anything I can.